all burned? Was it a coincidence that the flames traveled across hundreds of feet of pavement?
I saw this video yesterday on Instagram, and like I've seen it before, of course, like around the time the fires happened. But then I was just thinking, I was just like, everything's like connected because, like, well, very few people know America's a business. So I drew this whole little diagram, and like it just really just shows you like society is so messed up, and the people that we're supposed to trust and that we elect and appoint to take care of the citizens and just literally everything you could possibly imagine in society, they're not doing that. They have other agendas, and yeah, I recommend you go and watch the full video that I stitched because that will like make everything make more sense. Basically, we have here the US government implementing and plotting mass genocide for the locals of Maui in order to take their land. And then justifying it a few months later, the US government is using US taxes to support the mass genocide of Palestinians. Those are connected. And then you also see that the US people are starting to understand and see that, hey, like there's also stuff going on in America too as well. Increased inflation, homelessness increasing. People are literally on the streets asking for food, not even money. So make that make sense. And then we utilize taxes to support the mass demise of people. And then after making fellow Americans homeless, you give them nothing and they're living on the beach and trying to do anything they can to survive. Make that make sense. Not only did the US taxes support the genocide of Palestinians, but also it's funding a war, the Ukraine war. Uh-huh. And you know what's interesting? Nobody could even tell you what this war is about. Like, it doesn't even make sense from those that have family in Ukraine and Russia. Like, they're literally just as confused as everybody else about this whole thing. But it all leads back to money. Again, the US is a business. Very few people know this, but if you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I read the 2010 version, I believe. Yeah, they also talk about too how the US dollar isn't backed by anything. Very few people also know that too. So, and actually, I believe it was the president of Mexico that he's basically talking about that recently. I've seen a TikTok video on it, and I was just like, oh my gosh, oh wow. Hmm. It's crazy how nobody in the US has talked about this besides the books and everything else like that. And also in my I took this one class in college. It was called History of American Agriculture, and we were basically learning about the Chesapeake, and they were literally, it was a whole business deal to ship European men and women over to the Chesapeake. It was, yeah, it was a whole business thing. They were giving them land. And but thing is, women even own land too, which is like history tries to make it seem like women never own land or anything like that. It was, that class was so diverse, surprisingly, yet they try to make things seem like it's not diverse. It's just literally everything's plotted and planned. Like, oh my gosh. Again, everything's a business. So if you think about it, like the beginning of history, we all know that anytime the Europeans would travel, they would spread disease everywhere and a lot of people would die, pretty much any land that they would like touch. And they would also weaponize the disease to colonize land as well, which that is still being done today with the medical industry. Hence, have you noticed how increasingly more and more like America, we're known as the fat country, and a lot of people are starting to have guts? Guts that are literally not natural. Like you can just see like their hard tummies. Yeah, it's literally the food, the water. It has toxins in it as you in clothing. Yeah, clothing has toxins as well. Cancer is very expensive to treat. Most people have had family members that have passed away from cancer, so you already know. It's very expensive and super sad to literally sit there and see that. And for them to even experience it, like, oh my gosh. Um, Shout out to anyone who has ever survived cancer. Also, the US only supports and recognizes westernized medicine. Other medicinal practices are discouraged because you can't make money off of people who are trying to find the genuine root cause of the issue and heal it. In America, we tend to think of things as no, we don't think of things as connecting. It's very everything's linear, but indeed everything connects. The entire body connects. Dr. Sebi even said, and so many other people have said. So yeah. Also, speaking of Dr. Sebi, um, that was interesting as well. That's a different video. Anyone ever wondered why trafficking has always been an issue, human, drug, etc.? Yeah. It's connected to business and everything. Make it make sense. And how is like even the trafficking the Nickelodeon stuff and like major celebrities being connected, and not even just major celebrities, just wealthy people in general being connected to trafficking. It's all a part of a business deal, which is why we haven't seen any of this stuff abolished yet. On top of that, racism and like race is actually, as we all know, race is used to market and advertise. So we will see a bunch of movies about drug dealers and stuff like that. But at the same time, the real question is who's letting this stuff into the country? Like seriously, like you have to have somebody on high places and spaces in order to let this stuff through. The crack epidemic and all this other stuff, the opioid epidemic that's literally taking white communities by storm. Nobody talks about that, but you will surely hear about what's going on in the black community, which is just as bad. Like, why in the world? What? Like, okay. Anyway, you guys get my point. Just because it's not reported doesn't mean it's not happening. As we all know, most of the news stations and media outlets are literally paid off and are controlled by, yeah, they just don't report the truth, really, which is why a lot of people sadly find their information off of TikTok and then may or may not see things get reported on the actual news until 30 to maybe 90 days later. And also, real pedophiles tend to stay on payroll apparently, or like they'll do a whole oh my gosh, well, such and such decided to step away from the business or whatever, but the innocent gets fired. Johnny Depp. All the time when the men are innocent and like their name is slandered, that's because it's more of a punishment. I've also seen too, like around like the time that they were talking about P. Diddy, they mentioned Russell Brand and some other men. This happens to men of all cultures. They will slander their names. Also, Megan Thee Stallion getting shot in the foot by Tory Lanez. The LA court system is apparently highly corrupt. And on top of that, if I was her PR team, she would not be on the internet twerking because I don't even follow her, but every time she comes up, I literally see her butt first. Literally, she's like half naked on the screen, but people in the comments section even will say, we can see your butt, but we can't see your foot. That is bad PR. So you're literally just letting people know that what this man actually went to jail for isn't actually exactly what happened. It's more of a industry punishment used to whatever they're trying to cover up with her name and who she is. That's yeah, basically he's the fall guy. Also, celebrities can't be canceled. Recently a lot of people have been blocking celebrities massively. This is not a new thing. You could never block a celebrity. Like, even if you block them, you're still going to see them again. As I mentioned, racism is used to market and advertise. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, we need to stop talking about racism. And it's literally the wound that is never getting a chance to heal because of money. So I ran out of time. So here's a part 2. So basically, the last thing I just wanted to say was there just seems to be like a whole thing of a lack of accountability when it comes to the U.S. government and all of our elected officials. And do I think everybody in the government is evil? No. Yeah. As I mentioned before, the whole drug thing, nobody wants to talk about how the drugs are even getting into the country and destroying so many communities and people. Yet, if you think about it, pretty much every age group has some type of drug, whether it's sugar, alcohol, or just like any kind of substance. Like there's things like we're even like addicted to food because of the additives that's being placed into the food. The way things are marketed to us, oh my gosh, it smells so good, it looks delicious. If you were in the wilderness, you would not sit there and think about the taste or the smell of food, really, unless, well, I mean, you would probably think of the smell, but like you're not going to not eat something because it doesn't look or smell how you want. You're going to be hungry, and you're going to make sure that whatever you're eating is not going to make you sick, of course, but yeah. If you guys watch Naked and Afraid, you will like get this in any other wilderness kind of show. But the whole point is about the drug thing. Yeah, this has to be let in somehow by somebody. So yeah, this is all a part, everything, this is all a part of the business. Voting. When it comes to voting, I noticed that when a desired outcome happens, suddenly everyone wants to holler, oh my gosh, we need to do a voter recount because something is improper. Recently, with the last election between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, they did a whole voter recount. I think it took a few extra days to announce the president, too, actually. Because I actually had a presidential dream. Like, I saw Donald Trump in this dream, and I'm not sure if I shared it or not. But anyway, basically, I just knew he wasn't gonna win. Yeah, I believe, the other, we talked about this with, I believe it was Bill Clinton and Al Gore, I believe, that, like, the 2000 presidential election, they did a voter recount. It was with Florida, or something. Like, they said something like, oh my gosh, the Democratic votes were double counted or something like that. I think it was for Florida. Florida is like a swing state, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Or when it comes to voting, they like to say Russia did it. Now, how in the world are we running around here just like not protected? Like, they even said this with the power grid. They said that Russia could literally hack us, and within 6 months, 90% of Americans can die. So are we ran by outside forces? That's why I put that there. Because it just makes it sound like, this lack of accountability, like, who's really running America? And yeah, because even in, like, the Constitution and stuff, and just, like, early American, just, like, history, like, things just don't make sense. Even, like, down to, like, the whole Chesapeake thing, like, a lot of this stuff actually came from college. Some of it's high school, like, material, but like it all connects. So yeah, but long story short, if this can happen to people that don't look like you, and as well as fellow Americans, it can happen to you at any time. I mean, the one movie, Leave the World Behind, yeah, that was it scared a lot of people because it was so close to home. But in reality, if you think about all of these like movies and TV shows, The Walking Dead, The Hunger Games, Divergent, The Matrix, like there's like things that you can kind of connect to reality that are like very like uncomfortable to acknowledge. I even seen this one show called Revolution. That one basically talked about the electric grid and how everything, like all the cars shut down. Same as the one movie that came out to Leave the World Behind. And apparently, I also recently found out that President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama, they actually I think they directed the movie or something, but they had something to do with the movie being made and created, and I was just like, oh wow. But I just find it interesting too that like Donald Trump and the Obamas, like they're all like, they've all said things that talk about like, things that are considered conspiracy theory, but they're really not. It's very realistic. Like Donald Trump mentioned that we have like a shadow government, people that are very powerful and unseen. And that actually came up in one of my textbooks, and the history of American agriculture class, it just like literally went from like, yeah, down to like the food and the hybrid corn, and it just like very, yeah, there were like a lot of gaps in the class, but because in the like the course material, but if you know, you know, it just seemed like too like they were also like killing people off, because like why were you sending people to the Chesapeake, which is swamp water, like swampland, and people were dying, and like there was a disproportionate gender gap, like there were way more men than there were women, and a lot of men would die, so people were married 3 to 4 times, and there were mixed households and everything, so blended families, I mean. Yeah, but all that stuff happens, like it just literally, it's a repeat of history, taking over land, lack of accountability. Marketing and peer pressure like plays a huge role in people speaking the truth, as well as like blackmail. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes. Nobody talks about the contracts as well, and the law. So yeah, but that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and please share information that you guys like know too in the comment section.